Before you go the route of renting Disney Vacation Club points, there's a few things that you need to know, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to Epcot. We're hanging out today in World Celebration. We've got a beautiful view of Spaceship Earth. I've also got an ice cold drink over here, and I figure before we get our day started, we could talk a little bit about this really hot topic that I just don't think gets covered as much as it needs to. Certainly not in the way that I think it needs to be talked about. So look, you've probably heard people talking about renting Disney Vacation Club points, aka DVC points. I mean, if you're here on the internet, you've probably seen the ads, people talking about how you can save all this money on your Disney vacation, like up to 50%, or depends on who you're talking to. Some people say that you can book deluxe resorts for value prices, and it all sounds super appealing. And for the right family, it might be. Of course, it always depends on your situation. But what are the things that they're not telling you? What are the things that you really need to know? You know, all the things that don't really sound great in a commercial. That's what we're digging into today, and we're covering 5 of those things. So, you know the drill. Grab yourself something cold to sip on, get comfortable, and let's dig in. Now, renting Disney Vacation Club points is something we've talked about in the past. Essentially, Disney Vacation Club members have access to a certain number of points per year, and if they don't use them, they lose them. So one of the things that some Disney Vacation Club members will do is they'll rent out their points to non-Disney Vacation Club members, or sometimes even DVC members go this route as well, for a fee. There are a few different ways that they can go about doing this. You know, you can, of course, do this just privately in Facebook groups or wherever you might do that type of thing. You can also go through a third-party company. And these third-party companies are essentially a middleman. I mean, I don't want to get too much into this today, but just so that we're all on the same page, what happens is DVC members will go to a third-party Disney Vacation Club point rental company. They'll make an agreement on a price per point, and then those third-party companies will find people who want to rent those points. They act as a broker. Of course, some additional fees get tacked on here and there. This is, after all, a business, and it ultimately results in Disney Vacation Club members making a little bit of profit off of their points, and the third-party companies making a little bit of profit off of you, and then you saving some money by not having to pay the cash rate for a Disney Vacation Club villa. Now, if this all sounds wonderful, I mean, it's because it is for a lot of people. In fact, I know a lot of people, many of you actually, share your thoughts on renting Disney Vacation Club points. It's like the way to go for you and your family. It's a better option for you than actually buying into Disney Vacation Club. And while I think that it's wonderful that it works out for so many people, I also think that it can be a nightmare if you don't know exactly what you're getting yourself into, because the Disney Vacation Club experience isn't quite the same as a deluxe experience in the way that some of these ads and commercials, whatever you want to call them, say that they are. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a bit, but let's jump into this list. And the first item, number 1, is that Disney Vacation Club resorts aren't equal to their deluxe counterparts. Now, here at Walt Disney World, there are a variety of different types of resorts that all fall into different categories. There's value, moderate, deluxe, and DVC. Some resorts are exclusively Disney Vacation Club resorts. An example of that might be Old Key West, Saratoga Springs, Disney's Riviera Resort. But other resorts are shared, I suppose you could say. They have standard rooms as well as Disney Vacation Club rooms. A great example of this would be over at the Boardwalk. One side of it is the Boardwalk Inn. Those are the standard deluxe rooms. The other side of it is the Boardwalk Villas. Those are the Disney Vacation Club villas. It's these resorts, the ones like the Boardwalk, that are shared, let's say for the sake of discussion, that we're talking about here in this first thing that you need to know. While the rooms in the Disney Vacation Club section are going to be great, they're going to be spacious, they're going to offer a different list of amenities that you won't be able to find in a cash room, you know, in that non-DVC section. It's important to realize that there are going to be differences between the two rooms beyond amenities. A great example to illustrate this point is over at Disney's Contemporary. There, the Disney Vacation Club rooms are located in Bay Lake Tower, which is a separate building, though it is connected by a walkway. At the Contemporary, you'll find Incredibles-themed rooms. We actually just stayed in one not too long ago. It was a lot of fun. But you won't find that same theming over in Bay Lake Tower. Everything tends to be a little bit more subtle, a little bit more muted, not as well themed, and that's something you definitely want to be aware of, especially if you're thinking about renting Disney Vacation Club points because you want to save money, but your actual goal is to stay in one of those Incredibles themed rooms. So it's really important to be aware of this before you consider Disney Vacation Club point rentals, especially if you're thinking, oh, I can stay deluxe for less. You can stay DVC for less, and it's not quite the same. same. Yes, it's the same category of resort, the same fantastic locations and amenities. In fact, there are some more amenities and bigger room types, but if you want to stay at a resort for a specific reason, just make sure you keep this in the back of your mind. Number 2 is that if you're staying on Disney Vacation Club points, so you booked your room using points through Disney Vacation Club rentals, it's not going to be the same experience that it would be if you were paying for that same room using cash. This is especially true when we talk about housekeeping. So if you're staying at a Disney Vacation Club resort, you're staying on member points. Whether or not you're the member, your room is going to be cleaned in accordance with their housekeeping schedule. And the Disney Vacation Club housekeeping schedule is not the same as it would be, even for the same room in the same resort, if you were paying cash. What this means is that your housekeeping is going to happen every 4 days. This is opposed to if you were staying on cash and get housekeeping every day or every other day. For some families, this isn't going to be notable at all, especially if you're staying in a 1-bedroom villa or larger and you have access to laundry, because you'll be able to wash your own towels and whatever else. But if you're staying in a deluxe studio that doesn't have laundry in unit, or you're just looking for a more traditional hotel experience where your bed is made every day and you get fresh towels every day or two, this is not something that's going to be included for you if you're renting Disney Vacation Club points. So that's definitely something you're going to want to keep in mind, because I do feel like that can impact your experience negatively, especially if that's not what you're expecting. Number 3 is that flexibility is just not there when you're renting Disney Vacation Club points, and cancellations can be an issue. Now, I know that there are some of you out there who once you make a plan, you stick to it no matter what. But if you're someone who sometimes runs into issues, you fly by the seat of your pants, this is something that you're really going to want to be aware of. Because of the way that Disney Vacation Club works and the fact that points can expire, cancellations and modifications aren't as easy as they would be if you were paying cash for these rooms. Sometimes just because of the nature of the business that is renting Disney Vacation Club points. I mean, if you have to change something, you need to call that third-party company. They have to call the DVC member. The DVC member has to call DVC. DVC has to call the member has to call the company, and then they finally call you. And that's a lot. Honestly, even as a Disney Vacation Club member, just trying to contact DVC and get information from them can be a whole to-do. So having to add a few extra steps in there, I'm sure can cause a little bit of additional stress for those of you who go the route of renting DVC points if flexibility is something that's really important to you, or if you find yourself in a situation where flexibility happens to become important this time. But beyond how this process works and how it can be a little bit tedious to make changes and updates and everything, a lot of Disney Vacation Club rental companies don't have a cancellation policy. All sales are final. What you book is what you get, so make it work, or purchase an additional product that can cover you if you run into problems in the form of travel insurance. Now, just to touch on travel insurance real quick, whether we're talking about DVC rentals or travel in general, because this applies no matter what type of travel we're discussing, travel insurance can be really tricky. And it's really important if you're going to spring for travel insurance to understand what it covers. A lot of these policies have really tricky fine print that means you need to hit a number of marks before it will pay out and ultimately cover whatever it is that you want to cover. Now, I know what you're thinking. This travel insurance policy isn't a lot of extra money, so I'm going to get it just in case. You do you, okay? But I will say, in all of the years that I have been working in and focused on travel as an industry, I find that a lot of people purchase travel insurance without fully understanding it, and then they think they have flexibility that they never had. That can ultimately lead you to making bad decisions that lose you money in the long run, so just make sure you're really careful in this area. And if you're going to go the route of getting travel insurance, before you finalize any decisions that might have you looking toward your travel insurance for a solution, make sure you understand everything about it. Now, number 4 is something that we kind of touched on when it comes to flexibility, but I'm going to mention it again because I think it is so important. If you're renting Disney Vacation Club points, whether you're renting directly from the member or through a third-party company, aka a broker, you're going through a middleman. Sometimes two. Like I said, you're going through that sales representative, that broker, that Disney Vacation Club point rental company. They have to find a DVC member. They have to talk to DVC, and then the whole thing has to come back downhill. And that, for some people, again, is going to be fine. It's going to be worth the savings. But for others, this is going to be a recipe for disaster, especially if you're not really comfortable with putting the trajectory of your vacation in the hands of multiple people. Like I said before, and I'm going to go ahead and say it again, it can be difficult as a Disney Vacation Club member to get these things squared away. So if you aren't a Disney Vacation Club member and you're working through that broker, it can be even more difficult. It can be really time consuming, and it can be a lot of sitting around and waiting that you're not going to have to deal with, certainly not in the same way if you just book directly through Disney. Again, this is something that isn't going to impact everyone in the same way, but it's still something that you need to be aware of if you're thinking about going this route. And number 5, the last thing on our list, is that Disney Vacation Club point rentals is a very popular business venture at the moment. And I know what you're thinking. What does this have to do with me? Why do I need to be aware of this before I think about renting Disney Vacation Club points? Well, it's because there are a lot of questionable business practices going on in this area. Now, just to pull back the curtain for a second, as you guys know, I'm a Disney Vacation Club member. I'm pretty well versed in Disney Vacation Club, having been a member for as long as I have. But about a year ago, I started looking into Disney Vacation Club point rentals as a topic that we could discuss. I wanted to go through a company to rent Disney Vacation Club points. I started researching a company that I might want to go through, and I was blown away by some of the terrible business practices that I was seeing. Now, I'm not going to name any companies specifically. There are a number of them out there, though, and you should be aware of that. But I mention this as something that you need to be aware of because it emphasizes how important it is to do your research. Not only on that Disney Vacation Club point rental company that you're thinking about working with, but also taking some time to research their claims. You know, I've seen some of these companies make some pretty crazy claims, and I've taken some time to look them up, and it's very creative advertising, I'll just say that. So before you get sucked into some of the very, very appealing promises that some of these companies are making, take a second and just research. I'm not saying spend days or weeks doing this, but take a second and do a little bit of research, specifically pricing out what your alternatives would be. Is renting Disney Vacation Club points at the end of the day going to be worth it for you and your family? Or if you stayed in a moderate or a value, would that be a better financial decision, especially during the dates that you're planning on traveling? Now, again, there are going to be some of you out there who really just want to stay in a Disney Vacation Club resort in a villa, and you don't want to pay cash prices and all of these other things that we talked about. They're not a big deal to you. It's small potatoes. I'm not talking to you guys because you guys already know what it is that you want. I'm talking to those of you who think that this is going to be a massive savings for you and your family. My budget travelers out there. This might not necessarily be the savings that it sounds like based on some of the claims being made by these companies, sometimes because they're exaggerating a little bit, sometimes because the timing that they're basing their pricing on isn't going to work for you. So, like I said, take a second, do the research, and then go from there. So there it is, 5 things that you need to know before you rent Disney Vacation Club points. Of course, I'm sure that there are some other things you want to keep in mind if you're thinking about going this route as well. If I've missed any, feel free to pop them in the comments down below. Also, if you've ever rented Disney Vacation Club points, feel free to share your experience in a comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'm sure that others will find your experience helpful. But that's all for now. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed our time here at Epcot, and I hope you'll join me next time. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.